Hello everybody. I'll just let you enjoy kitties for a minute while I get the chat set up so I can see it. Well, weirdly just one kitty, even though I know the other one saw me carrying this stuff around. So we'll see if she gets here in a minute. This one got a double dose, I guess, so that's going to be fun. Are you going to be extra silly? I suspect she's going to be extra silly. So I am realizing now that I did not shake any paint before I start, but I also don't entirely know what paint I'm going to use. So, let's see. Just make sure I can see everything. Oh, here's a Corbin. Taffy got distracted and was lying down in the doorway. She does this for dinner all the time too. Like, she'll jump up in excitement when she hears the dinner noises, and she'll run down the hall, but only halfway, and then she flops on the floor. And it's like, don't you actually want to eat the dinner? I don't understand. But who does understand cats? So there's that. The yellow flap of paper over there is because some of these like to chew paper. So I thought I would give them approved things. Right, Corb? You a little bit chilled out now? A little bit confused now? You're fun, Corb. I love you. Oh! What did they just... I didn't even see what they just did. I'm gonna watch the video later and figure it out. Well, I guess we'll see if any of them come back, or if they're gonna go search for all the imaginary friends they can now see. I will switch to... Oh, here comes Chai. You can't see her, but Chai is back. There's a little thing under that white platform, so she's looking at that. But did I put fresh catnip on there? I might have, but I think you're gonna have to go higher if you want the fresh stuff. Okay, you work on that for a minute. We'll switch back to you if you figure that out. So you can see that my palette's a little wrinkly, and just for the benefit of people who are still familiarizing themselves with wet palettes, because it can be a little bit of an effort to figure out how to make them work. This is a pretty reliable sign that there's not enough water in here. Quindy says, Corbin jumped down and she tried to swat him but leaned too far. Well, that sounds like she kind of got what she deserved on that one. That's what you get for being the bossy queen bee. Doesn't always work out. Especially with this type of sponge, the smooth kind. If you get little wrinkles like that, it usually means that there is not enough water on the sponge. So now there's probably enough water. I just have to smooth everything out. And then if the little wrinkles start coming back again, I know that there, excuse me, is not, in fact, enough water. Excuse me again. Wow, this paper seems very long. And I am, well, see, it's still a little wrinkly, but I feel like there's a lot of liquid coming up onto my way too long paper. So I think I mentioned that I was doing this gouache paint course. Well, okay, I have not been doing this gouache paint course, but I had these intentions. Like, I was like, oh, the course is now that should be enough time before I have to do blah, blah, and I badly miscalculated that. But I have been going to all the classes, and I'm saving the recordings and practice and stuff, but I had set up another wet palette I have, so I had a big giant one, and I set that up. And then I'm like, well, it's really just so awkward. I'm going to set this little one up and see if that's easier for me to just, you know, sit and practice for a few minutes. And it apparently was not, because I didn't. But I didn't do it very long, so it had nothing in it. It didn't have paint in it. It was just water and a sponge, an old sponge, admittedly, and one of these papers. And when I was setting up today, I thought, well, maybe I should just take a look at that and see how it's doing in there. And how it was doing was like super moldy. So because there was something in there, really, there was air and water, and mold spores go through the air. And while, you know, your tap water is filtered for harmful substances and whatnot, that doesn't mean that it's like inert. It's not like distilled water that has nothing in it. So it grew a pretty good crop of whatever that was. All right, so I do have my 3-color guy who's mostly done. I just figured I'd bring him over if the other thing that I'm working on ends up having some stuff that needs to dry. So really, it just seems like the base, I think. Oh, and this gem. So that was one painted with just black, white, and these 3 colors. So if anyone wants to go back and watch the last 2 weeks video on demand, that was what I was working on then. But I am going to have a stab at working on this guy. My feeling is that when you've got stuff that's really old and weathered, it's only going to help if I end up having to apply multiple layers, which already I'm going to. This is very dark. Especially since that's the light side. I created my own reference photos, which I guess I could show you. Could I? Hold on, let's see. It will take me a moment to find that, so I will just give you a better view of this guy, who is one of the goodies you get when you buy a ticket to the Ed Pugh Hall of Fame induction and meet and greet dinner at ReaperCon. You also get some paints and some other stuff. I have to turn away to look at the phone, so I'm going to stop talking for a sec. Alright, in theory, this one is a good photo. So I took, now these aren't the greatest. I could have done this with a better setup, like a plainer background, worked a little harder to have a light. I was in a rush, so I went with what I had. At least it's something. So the idea is this is my primary light. It's kind of coming from this direction, and I did want to set it up so you kind of got the, I think this isn't a true Rembrandt lighting situation, I think, but where you get that triangle of light over one eye, the photographers call that Rembrandt lighting. And then, but you can see that there are things that you can't see, and this is more apparent from other angles. So I also set up a secondary light to catch some of those. So the light ratios maybe aren't exactly correct, and the secondary light ended up being much warmer. So it also kind of gives you a look at a cool primary light versus warm secondary light, which is what I was attempting to start to lay down the idea of. And my feeling is that it's going to work better if I reverse it, and I have a warm primary light and cool secondary reflective lights. But it just, yeah, there's the, and I use my phone camera, which isn't always the best because your phone is trying to take pictures in poor lighting conditions, and often bumps up the amount of light that you would see. So I had painted each of the areas roughly the value that they will be. But this is instructive for, you know, the idea of the primary light versus secondary light. So on the cool side, this is the brightest highlight color. I mean, there's pure white too, but apart from that. And this was on the bone areas. This was the brightest color I found on the bone areas on the shadow side. So the secondary light is secondary. Like, that's the idea of it, is that your primary light is so bright that the light color of secondary light's not really going to affect it. It's going to affect details that come out in the shadow areas. And then on the black, this was the lightest color in primary light, and this was the lightest color in secondary light, which again, I didn't set these lights up great at all. So those effects would be more pronounced if I had, you know, taken a little, when you, this isn't like as obvious, but you know, the area in secondary light, the lightest lights are darker than the lightest lights in the primary light area. So just wanted, you don't always have to make it all up in your head. You can make references for yourself. I also have pictures that I did not get off free websites of various old bone colors. And then I pulled out a bunch of paints that match those old bone colors. I've been looking up old leather colors. I'm not like 100%. I think I might use metallics for the metal areas, but I'm not 100% sure what I want to do. And then just to show you without weird lighting. So if you were here last week, you may have remembered the story of how I used airbrush primer and then it crackled, and then I had to take all the airbrush primer off. And my plan was to spray prime. And I'm going to discuss this because I know I'm not the only person who struggles with these kinds of things, probably ADHD thing. Because the next day when I'm all like, okay, I should go downstairs, you know, my husband set up the table area for me and he put a garbage bag down there so that I could, you know, catch the overspray and stuff. And I just wasn't going down, and it was getting later and later in the day. And I'm like, okay, clearly I don't want to do this. But instead of saying, well, it's what I'm supposed to do, I'm just going to sit here miserably not doing anything else until I do it, I thought, why don't I ask myself why I don't want to do it, or if there is another way I would be willing to do. And I didn't want to go down and put on, like I put on a coat and a breathing mask and some other stuff to do spray priming, partly for safety and just partly because if the smell is on me afterward, it drives me crazy. Sealer's worse, but there's still like a smell that follows you in a cloud with primer. And I find if I wear the mask and everything, then I don't seem to notice that later. So I asked myself, would you, you know, the way you normally do things is with a brush. Would you be willing to go in the other room and sit down and start brush priming this guy? And I was like, yes, I would be willing to do that. I can watch my TV show while I do that. I stay in the air conditioning. So like we're always talking about pushing your comfort zone and trying new things, and all of that's very valuable, and it is useful to finding quicker, more efficient, more attractive looking ways to do things. But it's also like you don't have to do that with everything all the time. Like this, we're doing this because we like to do it, presumably. Hey, retired 11B and a party of 38. Wow, welcome Raiders. I'm about to start working on painting this bust a little more than very little, which is where he is now. And I was just showing, I primed it with brush primer, and I used various shades of gray and black to kind of block out the major values, or the values of each of the major areas on the figure. So I just wanted, since I had already done a little bit of painting, I wanted to show kind of the starting point. And I was talking about part of the reason I ended up brush priming. I do find that helpful to do, but I tried airbrush and it was a fail and I had to strip it. And then I was gonna spray and I was like, well, I'd rather, even if it's gonna take longer, it's gonna take less time than waiting for myself to feel like going to do whatever. So, okay, nothing's broken. Don't paint it. This is one of the reasons why I use this. So I never have a problem with using my rinse cup to drink from, because I only have drinks that are in like tumblers like that. So they stay warm, and it also doesn't matter if I drop them on the ground that much. I mean, I probably dinged up that metal a little, but there we are. So I had 3 or 4 different old bones that I had looked at to look at the colors of. So one of them was like a cooler one, and there was like a very warm one, and then a one in the middle. So I was kind of doing the shadows and the things differently. But I also was trying to mix in different colors. So like to have a little bit of green, to have a little bit of purple, a little bit of red. So I will probably continue to do that. So I looked at my palette from the last time I painted. I got some skin colors in here and decided that I had to kind of purpley throw it out because you know how sometimes when you leave a wet palette it kind of turns into terrarium, even though I had left there's like a little aeration hole that helps prevent that. But that is one of the things I find trickiest with wet palettes is this, how do you get the perfect combination of ventilation but protecting the fluidity? And the answer is I have no idea, apparently, because it'll change with your weather conditions, of course, regardless of where you live. So I'm just going to throw some paint out. This is kind of how I was doing it the first time. And kind of see where I go. I'll have some darker ones, some lighter ones, so I can mix together if I need to. Retired 11B has been using wax paper. Wax paper or parchment paper? Most people use parchment paper. It's slightly permeable, where I think the idea of wax paper is that it's supposed to be impermeable, so the water's not really coming through. So this actually may be the paper that the people who made these palettes put out, because I think I ran out of parchment paper and I keep forgetting to go get some more. But I don't know, I'd be worried about wax getting, I stir a lot on my palette, I'd be worried about wax getting into my paint. Which may not, I mean, there is wax in some paints, but honestly, I've never heard of anyone using wax paper before. I'm very interested to know how that works for you. Has to change it a lot. Okay. I usually, if I'm painting like every day, I'll keep working on one of these papers until I fill it up, which does not take me very long. I do a lot of mixing. I would definitely try parchment paper. It's not expensive. You usually can get it at the grocery store. I have had times where it was hard to find in the grocery store, but I think that was like the pandemic when everyone was like, I'm going to take up baking bread. So I've ordered it. Also, if you have like a round palette, when we're doing paint and takes, you can get them in specific sizes on Amazon in like boxes of 100 or something, because people will use them at the bottom of cake pans and stuff, which is very handy. So when we have them for classes at ReaperCon, it's going to be something like that. And I bought a few because I do. Well, I don't really do the paint take anymore, but I got some to give to the kind person that is now going to do the paint takes in my neighborhood. And she started. She and her husband opened a game store, and she's doing them once a month so far, but I suspect she might increase it. I don't know. So that's in Knoxville, if anyone happens to be in Knoxville. We do have some good game stores here. So yeah, it's like a mess of colors the way I was painting bases the other day too. I'm gonna lean a little warmer. So this is kind of, if you were going for a warm bone, that's a warm bone, that's kind of a cool bone. Going for a bit of both. And as I say, you know, since I don't always do my best work on stream because I have to like remember what I'm doing and explain it and stuff, I often, you know, I might have to go over this, but I think that's going to be fine because things that are old and worn out are going to look cooler with, you know, multiple layers and depth and all that kind of stuff. So, Frikti. Sorry, I'm probably butchering your name. I didn't pick up a wet palette until just last year. Just been in a painting slump. I just can't seem to find the motivation to get past the setup of an area. It did, when I first started using a wet palette, it did take me a while to get used to it. I had a very specific way of painting. If you've ever watched Ann Forster's show on this channel, she paints every day from 11:30 Central for I think an hour and a half. And I painted very much like she does, and I still wouldn't say this is going to be using a wet palette more in the traditional way, but normally I don't. I just mix my different layers up here. And it took me a while to get used to it. Like, this was back before there were all these videos and things. So there were like text messages and tutorials and stuff, but you know, I didn't really see anyone using one for a while. This is just so much more of a messy disaster than I would normally do, but that's something I'm going to live with. And I had a damp palette was one of the problems I was having, and it is a wet palette for a reason. I think I liked this one. I didn't mean to put this many out, but at this point I'm kind of like committed to the nonsense. So, because yes, this is just 20 different colors of beige. So for the motivation to set up an area, are you trying to set up a permanent area, or the issue is that you have to set up to start painting, but it's in a part of your home that you need to use for other things, so then you have to put everything away, and that's kind of like the big barriers. Like I know before I can even paint, I have to go clear this off and then put this out there, and that kind of thing. Because I know that's very frustrating, and not everyone has the luxury of enough space to have a, you know, set aside painting area. But there are a few little things you can do. I don't know when you can find. I know I wrote a post about this. I feel like it was around a New Year's, not this New Year's, but a New Year's. And you can do stuff like get a tray that you kind of have, you know, like I have this thing that's just the paints I'm using for this, and I'll do that for projects. I have smaller ones for projects that don't have dumb numbers of paints. And you can have other little ones. I don't think I have any other sizes with me right now. And keep like tools in it that you would need and stuff. So you kind of just have everything that you're going to use for the project that you're currently working on, the stuff that you like always use, on a tray or in a little box. And you know, you can stick it under a bed, on top of a fridge, whatever you have to do to keep it out of, you know, pets or kids' way. And then you're not, there's like less of a hump to get over to just sit down and paint. And I think I had some examples of boxes and stuff on this thing on my blog. It also talked about, like, you know, if time is your problem, here's some things you could try. So it's if space is your problem, if time is your problem. I feel like there were a couple other areas that I tried to make suggestions for, but this was like a hot minute ago, so I can't remember. The ultimate plan is to convert the pet room into a hobby/makeup room for me and the wife, so currently it's hauling the totes of paint supplies out of the closet and herding our 3 cats from the work area. I mean, if there's stuff your wife also has to do to set up for the makeup, maybe you guys could kind of make an agreement that, you know, like Thursday, we're going to work on this for 20 minutes after dinner. Or, you know, spend a couple hours on Saturday and like actually put it in your calendar or whatever you use to sort of track stuff you're supposed to do. Because sometimes if you have a buddy, that can help. Help push through not getting stuff done. So I kind of want to reverse what I have here. I have the shadow area warm and the light area cool. And I think it would work better the other way, but this is all in the cool side, and I might as well get some paint on there. And do I even remember exactly what I was doing? Not really. I was just like making a mess. I was okay with that. Quindy found hands-on how to with paint resolutions. Yes, I think that is the one. But the other one you might find useful too. So it's hobby activities for tough times. So it's like you aren't quite in a frame of mind or situation where you can paint, but it's other stuff you can do so that you will have more time when it's time to paint. So like paint maintenance on bottles of paint is one of the things that I had in there. So it's like if I'm feeling too brain dead or whatever to paint, sometimes I'll just put on a show or an audio book and, you know, go through my paints and check that none of them need water added or anything like that. And there was a number of other activities of that nature. It's like stuff that when you're feeling good, you're kind of bitter about because you're like, ugh, this is wasting my time and I just want to get painting. But when you're feeling kind of blah, those are actually great tasks to feel like you're getting stuff done. You're working towards your hobby goals. So it's not, you're not doing nothing, but you're not doing something that's like super taxing, if that makes sense. Swatching, I've done swatching. Like I did a lot of swatching recently because I was just not in a place where painting was going to be a realistic idea. But swatching was great. It's just what the doctor ordered. That is another thing that can help with tedious tasks. Like if you have YouTube channels you watch or stuff on Netflix or whatever, streaming thing, I mean, usually it has to be something you've seen before that you know doesn't have much of a visual element because you have to look at what you're doing with both cleaning and painting. Oh, it's going to be fun to get at that wood later, but that is a problem for tomorrow me. Those can be motivational, especially if you have something, it's like, well, you know, I have this guilty pleasure thing. I love listening to this podcast, but, you know, it feels like a waste of time and I shouldn't do it. Okay, if you only allow yourself to do it while you're setting up that room, then that's like an additional bonus motivation to help you want to set up that room. Or whatever thing you're avoiding, which I'm sure for some people in this conversation is more like you have the room and the setup and stuff, but you don't seem to be getting down and painting with it. So I'm not saying these things work all the time because I'm living proof. This thing that should have been painted 2 weeks ago, these don't all work for everyone all the time. But it does help. I used to very much put off folding laundry, and partly because it would like make me want to fall asleep. It was so boring. So now I listen to things. I put some videos on because I can kind of watch out of the corner of my eye folding laundry, and it is so much more bearable. So these paints that have a lot of white in them. These darker ones, it's not really the case. In fact, a lot of them are kind of semi-transparent to begin with. But these ones can be like a little chalkier or, you know, super opaque, so they're not going to blend very easily. So I do sometimes add some water to those. And these are all paints that I did do paint maintenance on. Well, most of them. I don't know how many Pathfinder or special edition paints I may have pulled out because I didn't do all my maintenance on those. So I still need to do that. But, you know, guide that I should have finished 2 weeks ago is going to get priority over that right now. So yes, most of my advice about how to get your life together comes from my never-ending attempts to get my life together. It's the dream. One day. I'm working on it. I've been kind of a life slump, and I'm working on it. Working on my sad brain. Oh, speaking of my blog, actually, I okay, prepare to be shocked now, actually put up a new post. I know. This is not a thing that happens very often. It is with, I think I showed these guys on stream after I painted them, the hobgoblins. So there was an initial hobgoblin, Kadarg, I don't know, Kadarg. Quindy will probably put links to the Reaper store where you can both see pictures and buy these guys. And I painted the other three like not too long after that. But then, oh, here, let's go to this view for a minute because the kitty came back. She came back. Okay, and she's being very graceful and ladylike. Thanks, Chai. She'll go to sleep. Chai loves a good nap. So it's a band of 3 hobgoblins that they all like have different gear and they're very fierce looking, pretty cool. So I painted those up ages and ages ago, and then like I kept meaning to post them and then forgetting. Then I was like, you know what? I should actually do that and remember. So I did. It's up on my Facebook, the blog, and some other places, Instagram. The blog has the most photos. I mean, I think Ron may have put up all of the photos, if not close to. He was very happy with them. He likes his old school monsters. For once, I didn't stymie him. Well, actually, on this occasion, part of the reason I didn't stymie him is that we had some very careful conversations in advance about, all right, tell me what thing that you think everyone thinks these look like that I probably have no idea about that you need me to do here. So I make sure that I'm doing them how you want them. So on the article about Kadarg, there's even, I did some sample ones and I sent those to him to check the colors for the skin. And there's a discussion of that and then what colors I used for other people who like old school goblins. I mean, I guess I could show you a picture after because it's on my phone right now. I have no idea why meta things, you know, Facebook and Instagram, just do not seem to want to post photos from my computer. It's like it'll open it and then I won't see half of the photos. What? Why? So I just, at this point, automatically just download everything to my phone and update from there. So it is meant to look like a patchy mess right now. It's extra patchy because it takes more than one coat for coverage. But contrary to what you might expect, this is, I want the bone to look old and patchy, and the old bones I looked up really had a lot of color and tone variation within the bone. And I was kind of creeped out to discover, so I just put in old bones. Like, that's all I put in Google. And almost everything it showed me was human. It's like, what are other people searching for? Now I have concerns. So there were a lot of pictures just of femurs that you could buy, supposedly, from old anatomy class, skeletons that they would use at medical schools and stuff. But I know that they get educational body parts and not always the most reputable of places, say. So I think the bone overall is way too dark at this point, but since we got to get in all those little joints, I elected not to worry about it too much. I don't want anything too super blotchy. Let's come over here. And sorry, I usually turn stuff on Do Not Disturb before I begin. Let's cool down this side. So for the people who came in a little later, I took some reference lighting where I had a primary light from this side and a secondary ambient light, whatever, from that side. And just the lights I happened to pick up and use, the secondary light was warm. So I was going to try doing, you know, the primary light as a cool color and the secondary light as a warm color. And after I got a bit on, I was like, I think for this particular piece, I'd really rather have it the other way. So I have some warm stuff there that I need to cool down a little. And this was also in shadow. And then here, I think I actually made these shadows fairly cool. Maybe they're not actually getting hit by the secondary light, so they were cool in response to other stuff, but we've got to make these ones warmer. Maybe not do that. And it looks like crazy light because everything was dark, but bone is pretty light. So part of what I need to do here today, because everything else, you know, the cloth is going to be black. I'm still wrestling with some of the, like, do I want warm brown leather, warm black leather? Still going back and forth on a few things. It's one reason when I went looking for pictures, and it was, I swear I've had black leather things that have gone kind of blue when you've worn them out, but I wasn't finding any pictures like that. Bitter Freak Tea. I've got a bunch of pics from The Walking Dead for use as references for painting undead for the campaign I run, so actually seeing your process is fascinating for me. This isn't always my process. Sometimes I'll do very, like, I just have, say I wanted the cool, but I would just have like those, maybe a darker one and a lighter one, and I'd paint the whole thing, and then I'd use glazes or some other method of switching up the colors a bit here and there. But this is a bigger figure, so it's an opportunity to kind of go a little wild, have a little fun, do some things I don't normally do. So I'll do this, I do this on bases a lot to make sure, you know, because dirt and rock, it's more interesting if you've got variation going on. But I'll sometimes do that other thing that I said too, where I just do it like with plain grays and then add things for, you know, color interest later. And I guess I'm kind of reassured about trying stuff like this because I can do the reverse. If this ends up too blotchy and weird, I can use a glaze of a single color to unify it and knock back the colors that I might have added or whatever. And then I guess this is also to demonstrate the concept of, a lot of people call it blocking in, or miniature people tend to call it sketching, I think, from the Europeans. A lot of the European guys called it that. And the idea is that you start with a real rough, okay, here's the colors I kind of want to use, including, you know, your highlight and shadow colors. And then if you end up discovering that, oh, this isn't working and I have to change something, you're not losing a lot. Like, you haven't invested a ton of time because you're kind of goofing with it, you know. But, you know, you're just being rough with it, so it's okay if you have to go back and tweak something, as opposed to the way I more typically paint is like paint one section at a time. to a very nice finish or standard or whatever. And then if I decide I don't like it, that is fun for me. I get to do it all over again. I just don't have dark enough for some of these. Well, the middle dark, these things are too dark. And I don't typically paint larger things. I don't typically paint like this, so part of the reason I was excited to get this assignment is it was an opportunity for me to kind of play around doing some stuff I don't normally do. So yeah, he's been dead a long time, so I don't think he has any flesh on him. That's why I went with just straight bone research. And I like that kind of, you know, golden, browny, you know, warm. I like that warm bone color as well. I've done cool bone too. But I don't know. I guess maybe I had some trips to the museum when I was a kid that kind of cemented that this was... Oops, I didn't mean to go that far up his nose. Poor guy. But he's been successfully liching around for kind of a while now, I figure, so... He does not have any flesh left. So yeah, that yellow golden tone, I like that on bones. Reaper does have a couple of nice bone triads, and I'm sure that this includes, I'm pretty sure that's old bone or something. So they've got one that's the cooler and one that's the warmer. So there's definitely some of those in here somewhere. But then I was like, no, I want more additional colors. So I'm not really worried about this line where the shadow and the light are going to meet. That's the kind of thing I used to worry about, and then as I painted it more, I discovered that that is actually a pretty easy problem to resolve. Just kind of combine from the two sides and go along the edge and just soften it up a little. And I feel like I probably do want to keep that shadow pretty dark. I think I was showing my lighting reference as the raid was beginning. So I set up lights on the figure and actually took pictures for reference for the lights. So I've kind of got the color coming from one place and the light coming from another place. Of reference, I mean, not. But if you're just starting to play around with stuff like that, you can get, like, you can use tissue paper, but they make little plastic, like acetate sheets or something, I think, for using over camera lenses and stuff to, or lights, to shift the light. I mean, I bet a bunch of you, like my husband, have smart lights. So you can set an overall room light to a particular color. And then you can kind of get an idea of, you know, the color of the light as well as the location of the light, if that is something you need for reference. But like, we have this idea in our minds that we're supposed to just be able to learn all this stuff and know it. And that is not true. A lot of really good artists of both miniatures and other things use references. Like the David Peterson, who does the Mouse Guard cartoons, he's actually made 3D structures, you know, out of cardboard and stuff, to understand how an environment would look. And he's doing, you know, little mouse characters wearing cloaks and stuff. Like, it's not, he's not painting the real world, but he does want it to have a certain amount of a naturalistic look, and you know, be a believable 3D space for something like the buildings. James Gurney, who is definitely a good person to follow. He has, I don't know, Gurney Journey and some other places where you can kind of, he shares his wisdom. All right, this is my cool side. And he'll talk a lot about light and different colors and stuff. He's got a book as well. Color and Light, shockingly. Although, speaking of cute little mouse characters, the next release of Magic the Gathering is gonna be kind of like cute little mouse characters. David Peterson has done several pieces of art for it. They're calling it Bloomburrow, but, you know, depending on which anthropomorphic animal thing you may have enjoyed in the past, you may think of it as Redwall or Mouse Guard or Secret of Nim, Narnia. It's got vibes like that, which I'm like, did not want to get sucked in to buying Magic, but here we are. And at first I thought, because they did a fairy tale one a few years ago and it wasn't very popular, and I thought, well, I bet this is going to be kind of the same. You know, the hardcore people who play Magic are going to be like, this is too twee or whatever. But nope, apparently it is super popular because we've all of us read one or the other of those or watched one or the other of those or something. Yeah, let's just even go blue. Cool that down more. So I'm concerned that side is getting a little too light, but I think I probably just haven't lightened up the light side enough. I do like how kind of grungy and stuff that looks. Are my crevices all dry yet? I think they are, but I'll keep working on this a bit more, start nailing. I don't always like to start with the face because, you know, it's very important. You want to figure out what you're doing before the face. But I think it's more interesting for you all too, so I'll keep going on this for a little while. I'm gonna lighten up and warm up this side. What else was I going to say? Right, so I posted the hobgoblins finally, but the stuff that's on my actual blog with them also includes kind of a discussion of how the painting experience was not great for me for a variety of reasons that have nothing to do with the figures. And I thought I'd be, you know, I talk about stuff like that on this channel a lot, because I think that our psychology, I don't know what you want to think of it as, I think our thought process and things like that can have a big effect on our experience painting, how we feel about the results, how we feel about trying to learn new things. So I try to be open here about my, you know, frustrations and failures, as well as my successes and things I'm all right at. And I've talked about some of that stuff on the blog, but I don't know that I talk about it as much, so it was kind of an opportunity for me to share some of that stuff on the blog. But it's also very easy to just scroll through and look at the pictures if you don't care about any of that kind of nonsense. Because I was not in a great headspace when I was painting those. And it was a very torturous process. But then Ron is like super happy with him. It's just so weird that, like, one of the points that I was making with the post, and that I probably didn't emphasize enough, was that we sometimes get thrown off when, like, we did something and it was super hard and we feel like we've leveled up and we've made an accomplishment, and then other people don't seem very enthusiastic about it. Like they're going on about some other thing we painted that we just kind of phoned in. Or, you know, it's like, why aren't you loving this thing that I love? Or you'll get the reverse, like I had, where people really like something that you think is crap that you did. And I think sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes that is because of stuff like what I'm talking about in that post. It's about where my headspace was more than, you know, like I can't really be objective about these guys. Like we could never really be objective, but I really can't be objective about these guys because I just, you know, the things that were happening and the way I was feeling colors how I feel about them. Not sure. I feel like I'm losing my color variation blobbiness a bit on the ribs. Have to work on that. I don't want the ribs to go like super light, because, you know, the light's coming this way. That's not like a main story of the figure, so the face is going to have a lot more contrast and go lighter in highlights in the end, even if not right now. And there are, that's true, this back here is also cool shadowy. And why don't I go ahead and get the white off of those teeth? Because, you know, if the light's coming this way, this fold of cloth is going to be blocking some stuff, so I gotta make sure I get that darkness in there. Sorry, I do not know why my watch is binging so much. I normally put it on Do Not Disturb. So I don't want the transition to be too, you know, like there's still going to be some reflected light or whatever back there. But it is too wet to work on that very much. So I will go back to the light part of the chin. So I want that cheekbone to have some nice definition, but this is also, you know, this is the light side, so I gotta get out some white. And with this one too. So this is like, this is from the Pathfinder paint range, and it's color I like a lot. You can get the same thing by taking white and mixing some yellow in it. But when I'm doing warm light, it's just very convenient to have that ready to go. Oops, I did not need that much of it. But again, as these are both colors with a lot of white in them, I'm going to thin them down just a little. The white especially has a lot of white in it. Strange to relate. So if I kind of get at least a little information about what the, you know, highest level of lights is going to be on the face, I can hopefully start locking down some of the other areas with a bit more confidence. Color is very relative, so you know, it looks kind of insanely bright to me in a way, but you know, it's bone. It needs to be a lot lighter, and it's just, I'm getting thrown off because all of the base colors on everything else are pretty dark. So I kind of have to just push through and get at least a little of the colors that I know would be there in the end on here, so that I start having something else to compare to. Because, you know, I clearly went way too dark in my initial sort of test laying. And that's the kind of thing you get, the benefit you get with this blocking idea. So yes, that is looking much more bone-like, I think. We'll get a little bit here in the shadow area now that it's dry. But overall, I'm okay keeping that pretty dark. In fact, I will have to test whether I covered over some stuff I shouldn't have covered over. So I will have to go back to my photographs at some point to see the exact, you know, point of the light and the dark, but I'm not going to sweat it too much right now. Putting a little more of that golden color back in. So yeah, I'm pretty sure if you Google old bone, you will find examples similar to what I am referencing. So here the trick is, this is supposed to be the shadow side. I cannot go as light as this, or it's not going to look like a shadow side. So I may have to go in the other direction and add more to the shadows rather than adding more to the areas of light. And we're so used to, you know, hunting for contrast and trying to make more contrast that sometimes it can be challenging to do that, to like keep an area overall darker or overall lighter instead of taking everything up to a really light color and everything down to a really dark color. But it will definitely, I think, add interest to his face if it's not, you know, and here too, if it's not uniform, you know, so like this hand is going to be in light and then it's going to shade around to where the arm isn't. But I did forget that the eye socket actually is in light. So there basically is light and should have the same value and the same kind of warmth of colors as on the other side. But everything else on that side is shadow, I believe. So color, put some of this in. this side, one of my goals with the light was to set it up so that that side of the remnants of the nose base, I do not know what the official term is for that little bit of bone that the cartilage of our nose attaches to, but I wanted that side to be shadowed. So I messed around with the light until it was. Oh, we're probably about to lose this cat because I hear my husband doing food things. And I did just kind of want to use like a little bit of a reddish color inside the nostrils because it seemed disquieting to me for some reason. Even though, you know, I said I wasn't painting him as if he had flesh on him. So this figure is null something, and he's available to people who purchase a ticket to the meet and greet Hall of Fame induction at ReaperCon. So there's only going to be 400 made. I don't think this counts against the 400 because this was a test print. And there are potentially, you know, up to 400 people can purchase tickets to this event. Anything that's left over will go to the ReaperCon booth store. And then anything that's left over after that will go on the website. And anything I just got wrong in the prior sentence, Gwendy will now correct. So there's a link up in the chat now to where you can find out more about ReaperCon and buy tickets and stuff. There's also miniature painting classes and the MSP Open show/contest, and in that event you are competing against yourself. You don't have to be like a marvelous award-winning painter to enter. Each person's entries are assessed kind of against a overall standard and awarded silver, gold, bronze, or a certificate. There are like sub-contests within that may be, you know, for different manufacturers, so you don't even have to paint Reaper products. And you can just grab stuff off your game table or your shelf or whatever, and we just like miniatures, so just show us some cool miniatures and we're all very happy people. And it's a fun place to look at miniatures too, because they're not behind glass, they're up on tall tables, so you can't touch them, but you can get a better look than you can get at a lot of contests. And really see how people did what they did, which is very fun. There's just like activities, paint and take, Sophie Says, which is you're trying to paint in a sort of Simon Says situation. It is hilarious and frustrating, fun, and you get a miniature at the end, so who hates that? And then there's just the awesomeness that is hanging out with a bunch of other people who have the same nutty obsession that you do. I mean, that's really, I think, what keeps a lot of people coming back. You know, your first time you need to get excited about the classes or the contest or something, And then after that, you might like those things, but what you're probably most excited about is coming back and seeing friends. And I've been going for many a year. I think I've only missed 2. Missed the second one. No, I missed the first one. I went to the second one. It was so flippin' hot in Texas, I couldn't believe it. And I didn't come back to the fourth one. Green User says, I like the height of the tables. It's so much easier to see the awesome paint jobs. It really is, because you don't have to, when things are on shelves, you know, those poor people whose piece gets stuck on the bottom shelf, because, like, how many of us make it down there to really see it? And if you are someone who is height challenged, I think they do have like a step stool or something, because one of our judges is height challenged. There is, just talk to the people at the contest desk and they will help you get a better look. The contest room is also a nice place to go if, you know, you kind of get sensory overstimulation and you just want to be somewhere that's a little more quiet. So there's still people in there and there's a little bit of talking, but it's just like way, way, way quieter than the main hall. It's like a little hidden quiet zone, I guess. So I enjoy that from time to time. Because I do love being in a room with, you know, 1,000 or so of my people who love the same thing I love. But sometimes you need a little bit of a break. So I'm not going to stress about this transition too much for right now. All right, so that is looking more bony, I think. My shadow is shadowy enough, too shadowy. I think the chin kind of carried around a bit too. The light here needs to pull back a little. And let's see, that area would not really be getting very much light. Darken that. Ditto up here. Hope I lost some of my, lost too much shadow over here maybe. I know it's an annoyingly back and forth process. But I think it helps to stop thinking about that as an irritation of you messing up and just understand it as part of the process. Like you have to do something and then you have to kind of step back and look at it. I'm sure that I'll have very different feelings about this after I put it up in my observation shelf. I'll find all kinds of things I might want to do differently. Or I might not. I might need a bit of like full strength white for the very top. Little bits of boniness. But I think I'll leave that there for now. Zachariah says, believe in the process. Yes, I found that my painting started improving a lot when I got over the idea that my putting the brush down and saying, I'm done, instead saying, okay, I'm pretty close to done. I'm going to put it over here. I'll look at it for a little bit and see if I, like, you know, miss painting the belt or some one of those other things that I tend to do all the time. Okay, let's get some paint on this arm. So just like it did on the face, it's going to look, you know, terrible and patchy at first. And like Zachariah said, I'm just going to trust the process. It's eventually going to get to the same kind of place that I got with the other things. I might not worry about the color variation too much at this stage. Work more on the value. I think that's something that we tend to do to ourselves as miniature painters, where we're creating our own problems. We do feel like we should be able to do everything at once. So we should be figuring out the value and the color and making textures and all these other things at the same time. And sometimes it helps to, you know, space that out. Like I didn't use my primer to try to decide the main values of the areas. If I'd been very ambitious, I might have done that with the light shadow thing, give myself a map. But I have a reference photo, so I'll use that as my map. And I could just, you know, lay down basic values at this point, then, you know, go back and add a touch of pink here and a whatever there. I probably should look at my photos because there is some specific things about the, you know, it's like this side of the knuckle was cool and this side, or the flange, was warm. So painting in ways that you can kind of break up what you're concentrating on. Like I pick the colors not during the painting process sometimes to, you know, try to work that out as a different thing. Zachariah, I have a process much like the grieving process. I grieve the things that don't look like my vision. I get frustrated with it. I bargain with the paint to behave. I get depressed about it, and then I accept that it's actually not that bad of a paint job and move on. That is a bit of a joke, but I did make it similar-ish to my actual process. And yes, I've had both experiences where I've gone to bed after painting for a while thinking, well, this is total crap, and I hate it, and everything's horrible. And I have learned to not change anything. Like to not just grab a brush and paint over whatever it is that I'm feeling that way about. I learned that the hard way. Because sometimes I wake up the next morning and go, oh, well, this is fine. This is not, you know, as garish and horrible and whatever as I thought it was. This is, you know, maybe I gotta tweak this and tweak that, but overall, this is what I was going for. And I've had the same experience where I've spent the night and I'm like, yes, I'm doing the contrast. I'm addressing all the things that people always complain about my painting for. And then I wake up the next morning and I'm like, where did the contrast go? Like, did somebody come in the night and steal my contrast? Because I was sure that I did it, and now I don't see it at all. So it's just weird how that kind of works sometimes. Zachariah thinks a kitty cat is attacking Julie, but I don't think Julie has a kitty cat right now. Alas, Julie should have a kitty cat. But yeah, my new cats love to type for me. They're very helpful. They totally make actual words. And I've been going back to crosswords. I used to be into crosswords. And then I realized recently that I had access to some through some apps that I use. And I was like, oh, why don't I see if I still like crosswords. And the cats are super helpful for that. They totally fill in the exact correct letters and don't put numbers around. I don't know why the crossword is allowing me to put numbers in, but for the cats of the world, I guess. I don't know. Green users. Yep, the process is I hate it. It's not so bad. I hate it. It's not so bad. Yeah. Yeah. That is sometimes like the hardest part of doing it, is like just dealing with that roller coaster of emotions, and like, how do you know when you're seeing it at all accurately? And I guess you don't, but you just kind of ride it out. That's my secret anyway, I suppose. That is my process now, says Zachariah. If I hate it, I give myself time or physical distance to allow my perspective a chance to change. And I, even if I don't necessarily hate something, but I'm kind of like, just something isn't right, or something's wrong, or I haven't done something, and I kind of like have no clue what it is, or I don't want to be too hasty in assuming what it is, and, you know, taking away something that should be there. I like to give it some time. That's it. This is why, if you are doing something like the MSP Open or painting for Gen Con or something like that, if you can, make yourself do it and start painting, you know, well before the deadline. It's really helpful to have some time where you're not painting that thing, and then you can kind of come back to it with fresh eyes and go, okay, now is there anything that I see or don't see, or, you know, that I feel like I missed, or that I could do better, or I didn't quite hit the mark. Just a little bit of time can make because you kind of reset your eyes. Even when you get up to go get a drink or something and you're painting, like, put it down, turn off your lights. Then when you come back, you know, take a look at it in regular lighting. Because whether it's a contest entry or something you're putting on the game table, people are not going to be looking at it with the kind of lighting that I have going on at my desk right now. Julie says, I've got to stop typing with my offhand when I have string gel all over my fingers. String gel? What's this? Sounds interesting. So I think we're getting a little more of an old bone look on this hand now. There's still a few shadow areas I kind of need to address, but let's work on the lightness a little bit more. Well, the finger fix is certainly easier on a bigger figure. I will say that. Well, that sounds like a cat doing naughty things. Well, not naughty, but about to go over to this desk that I'm using. And would like to continue. Hi. Yes, how may we help you? It's not the normal chaos monkey. It's, oh man, she's trying to type with her stomach now. Okay, bye. She had to do a little circuit, I guess. So that was Try's foot passing by. Got to enjoy some little kitty footsies. Alright, I do need to address some of the shadow now, I think. Okay, now what are you doing, Nettie? If you're looking for your bed, you were in it a minute ago. Remember? I move it on Mondays. So so that we can show the people how cute you are. You're like deliriously, insanely cute. This is why I stayed up too late last night, because they were all snuggled up, and I'm like, well, I can't disappoint kitties. And they sleep with us if we take a nap during the day. And sometimes they'll come in, like my husband gets up much earlier than I do, because he's got, like, you know, one of those real jobs. And they'll come sleep with me then. Not always, but sometimes. But they don't come sleep with us at night. And I kind of feel that somehow Corbin explained that you know, this is his monkey, and they need to back off and not try to get between him and Kevin. He hasn't been very firm about anything else, so I don't know how he managed it, but I think somehow he did. Like, if you were really a lich, would your bone get all, like, polished and bright because you're doing stuff? You know, how you get wear on things, or you keep blades clean because you're using them. Like, I'm not going to change how I'm painting this guy, but it's just a interesting. Well, what are you doing now, Kat? Philosophical question. Gotta make sure she doesn't play with the brushes. It seems like she's looking for something, but I can't think what amazing, exciting thing she's expecting to discover in these areas that she has wandered through so many other times. Ooh, now I'm seeing how patchy some of this is. That's okay. It's blocking in. It's fine. It's fine. I can stop worrying. It's supposed to look crappy right now. Okay, what are you doing, you weirdo? Now she's somewhere where I can't entirely see what she's doing, other than I can hear that she just threw something on the floor. Thank you, Katie. You're very helpful. Let me check what time it is, because, you know, I know how Quindy gets concerned if I go over too much. So this is not an ideal, it's not as bad as I normally am, but it's not an ideal way to use a wet palette, because I've got these paints kind of spread out, and that actually makes them start drying a little quicker. So I'm just checking if some of them need water. So if you can, just having a little drop like that and then taking stuff off and doing it on the side is sort of the more efficient way. But I kind of worked out part of my process before I even started using one of these, so I adapted it to how I do things. Which is kind of what I was saying at the beginning, you know, when I wasn't doing the obvious logical choice of airbrush priming or spray priming this figure. And I kind of just had to ask myself, okay, what are you willing to do instead? Instead of not doing anything, what are you willing to do? If I'm not going to do stuff the way I'm supposed to, is there a way that I can do things and actually do the thing? And that was just sitting down and using a brush instead of making it way different from what I normally do. That doesn't mean there won't be another time when I feel like I should be pushing myself to do something differently than the way I normally do. But since I need to get this done, it's okay that this is not the time. So yes, I definitely needed to mix up something between here and here, because that's what I am constantly missing having. It's not the darkest dark, but the next one over. Sure you can see in there. I'm not sure I can see in there, honestly. So these ones that look like skin colors are in fact skin colors. I was surprised when I did my kind of analysis of the bones and I took some, digital samples. I'll go on a couple of spaces on my reference photo and kind of sample the colors. And I was surprised to discover that some of the colors were pretty skin tone-ish. So I thought I would go ahead and throw those in my mix. And then I sort of get the addition, a little bit of pinky reddy as well as the golden options. And that will hopefully add visual interest, because this guy's arm is probably more bone than I would paint on a gaming scale skeleton. So I gotta do stuff to make him interesting to look at. Keep your eye engaged. Yep, it's just a little darker. interesting exercise in learning that I definitely still have work to do on value matching. And it's tough, so that's okay. So I'm deliberately applying the paint in kind of a patchy way because that was something that I noticed on these bone samples that I was looking at. So my focus is creating the correct values based on the light, but if I can add a little of the texture that's not about the light, that is cool too. I think whether some of these, the intersections between the bones, it's like I want it dark, but I don't want it crazy dark. Because, you know, this is a really deep depression, seeing into a black pit, essentially. But these are, you know, it's like our fingers. Instead of if you were like that, that's going to be much darker. If you're like that, that's not a very dark line. Trying to gauge where to go with that. So it was my birthday this weekend, and we actually did stuff. My husband and I are normally just fairly terrible at special days, and we don't sweat it because it's like if the everydays are good, then that's okay. That's a good trade-off. But he actually, you know, went all out this year, and we made a little plan to see our friends and do some things. And one of the things I was like, you know, I'm still having some back problems and stuff, so I wasn't sure about something like bowling or axe throwing. I don't know. I looked up what do adults do for parties, and these were some of the suggestions. So I was like, what if we went and did that, you know, paint pottery thing? That seems like it would be fun. It'd be like, I can be creative with my friends, but people don't have to, like, find it threatening because we're all going in not having done this. And the person that was on staff right then was not the most helpful. So we got like very little guidance of what to do. But we sat down, we gave it a shot, we had fun. I'm pretty sure that the things that I painted are going to turn out just so horrible looking, and that the things that my friends painted are going to look way better. And it's going to be hilarious because, you know, supposedly I'm a painter and stuff. So should it be that way? Probably not. But Kevin picked out this like huge, you know, relatively speaking for the pottery place, geometric-ish cat and that he wanted to paint like Corbin. And I did like this very gloopy approach to the stripes. I think that doing more of like a dry brush texture-y thing would probably have been the way to go, but I guess we'll find out. They have to, I think they put some kind of finish on it to make it like all shiny and stuff, and then they fire it so you can come back like a week later and pick your stuff up. only had one kind of dragon, and it was not, I didn't think it was that cool. But then when we were looking at the shelf of the finished stuff, there were 2 other kinds of dragons, and I'm like, how did everybody steal the dragons before I even got here? So I might want to go back now and then and see if they have dragons. I also did a little blowfish that has a cork, because I thought it would kind of look like a, you know, like a weird jar. If I wanted to do still life, it would be a fun thing to set up in a still life painting. And it was cute to paint. I did purple and teal because, you know, that's the law. It's the law of painting. I don't think that texture thing is looking as cool on the back of his arm, but probably just means I need to do it a few more times. Likewise here on the flanges. But yeah, now I have this as kind of an example of what I think looks cool. Kind of capture some of what my inspiration photos had. Yeah, what was the other? I was looking up all these things. I was looking up old bones and some other thing, and I'm like, I really hope that I don't commit a crime anytime soon. In the, you know, the investigators look at my search history, and it's not going to look good for me. But it was all for non-nefarious purposes. So yes, that is still well under the lightness of the face. I don't know if I even need to. Maybe I need to go just a little. I won't do as much yellow though, so it'll stand out a little less. So I'm not going to go up to pure white, and I'm going to use less yellow in my lightest value paint, so that should hopefully make it kind of fit with what's happening on the face, but not more attention grabbing than what's happening on the face. That's my theory at any rate. And I'll need to work that in, of course, but just getting an idea with the values. I think that looks a little more cohesive. No, I do not know where Kitty went. Mysterious. Maybe she's asleep on my other chair. She does like a good chair, that one. And a good snooze. She's very pro-sleep for a young cat. So I don't know if that means that when she's older, she's just going to be like all asleep all the time, but I guess I'll find out. Her sister keeps us busy enough with all her chaos. So yes, this is a long and fiddly way to do it, not how I would do it if I were painting like a bunch of skeletons for my game. I'd figure out a set of colors that work pretty well together on one guy, and then try to very efficiently apply that to the other guys. But this is meant to be, you know, these bigger pieces, you need to worry more about stuff like making it visually interesting and breaking up, like, you know, that's a lot of bone. It is broken up throughout the figure, so that helps. But, you know, okay, this is like, sometimes busts have things cut away. But let's pretend that was the back of a cloak. That's like a lot of cloak at the back. I would have to try to, you know, maybe add some weathering, make cloth texture, have different colors in the shadows, stuff like that, to make it more interesting to look at. And that is the kind of thing I will be talking about in my class. Now, there's some of those things you can do on gaming scale figures, and some of them don't take like a huge amount of time and effort. It's just kind of thinking of them. Like when I talk about glazes, glazes are quick, and you can add a lot of color variation with them. But I'm a slow painter, and I'm being okay with that today. Unlike when I was painting this guy, where I was like, why can't I get him done in one stream? But almost done in 2 streams, so that wasn't terrible. And we got to talk about self-critique a bit last week when I did the second half. That process of figuring out what isn't working and what you need to fix. If you want to, of course. I mean, I totally have miniatures where I've been like, okay, the time limit has been reached, and my patience limit has been reached, and I will be taking whatever I learned here and applying it to the next thing, not redoing this thing. This is kind of the process I figured that I would need to use to get the sort of texture effect that I want. And I don't find this that painful. I know some people would, but it is not that bad to me. Potential spam. Well, no thank you. No thank you, spam. I bet that my loan application needs me to do something, because that's the potential spam I've been getting a lot of lately. And I will not be doing whatever that says, because I don't have a loan, and you guys are just trying to steal my stuff. Now I got this whole dark side to work on still, but that's getting pretty close on the light side, I think. So I had a little bit to blend in, but let's just get another coat of paint on here, maybe. hooky brush. Oh, and it's good and hooky. So that annoying thing that happens to brushes, I think you can see right there, does have one useful application. So I'm trying to get to the other side of something that's a cylinder, essentially, under the finger here. And that's hard to do with the straight end of a brush. But with the hooky brush, it is so much easier. Not sure I got under this finger claws either, so get in there. So I always like to keep one synthetic around that's got a good hook. Sometimes it's tough when the brush is worn out too much for me to use it for that, but I haven't broken another one in to have the hook yet. It's like, well, that's annoying. Now what do I do? Now let's go for 2 more. I probably lost you all. You're all like, just so bored. Because all the Katies went away. No, how am I supposed to stay entertaining without Katies? They wanted real naps, I guess. Or they're out destroying something, and I'm only going to discover this when I get up and start walking around the house again. No, I'm pretty sure that I would hear chaos from here if they were. And they're not that terrible. Although it was... So the one cat, she doesn't unroll the toilet paper. She just grabs a whole roll and messes with that. So she either bites it on the thing or, you know, she grabs some out of the spare and carried it off and shredded the paper. She's like super into paper for reasons I don't completely understand. So it's been a few weeks or probably even a month since she first did that, and I'm like, oh, maybe she kind of is getting over that, and I'll be able to put my toilet paper up, because right now I kind of have it on a shelf, and then I surround it by things so that she can't see it, which is not super convenient. I was like, maybe I could hang my toilet paper back up on the bowl. And then last night she found the old, because I let her just keep the one she racked. She found it, and she just like pulled off so, like pulling off all these chunks, and there's like piles of toilet paper all around. And then I'm like, well, no, maybe I guess she's not done being entertained by that yet. So I will continue to hide my toilet paper for a little while longer. But overall, they are very good kitties, and they haven't really destroyed anything. They know they're not super coordinated, so they don't get up on a lot. They're like painfully uncoordinated. Like, oh my gosh, do you even know how to cat? But it's adorable. So I probably would have put away the things that I packed up when we were getting ready for them to come. I just haven't gotten around to it. We've got some stuff that I could put back out. But first, I guess I better concentrate on Mr. Skeleton. probably do more of this tonight. Start getting the cool side up to the same level as the other side is, so I can kind of test, you know, make sure that that cool warm thing is working. And then, I mean, that's really, this is a warm side that I'm now painting with cool paint, but that's fine. We started the other way today, so I'm confident that we'll just call that additional complexity instead of me messing up. Zachariah, I've caught Tiberius transporting tabletop quality miniatures from the desk to the floor so we could bat them around there. So far, he mostly listens to me when I tell him it's a bad thing to do. I think it's just that I've given him better alternatives. Yeah, you have to give them, you can't just say never do this thing. You have to give them alternatives. So that's why there's a piece of paper set up over there. Because I'm like, oh, here I had the scrap thing. Before I throw it in recycling, I'll let you have some fun with that. And, well, for miniatures, Archer kind of already cured me of leaving stuff out. So, I very rarely leave stuff out. Sometimes I'll have like an unpainted bones sitting around. And even Corbin likes it. Like, he'll pick them up and just throw it. Like, he'll grab it by the sword and toss it around or something. Why does this amuse him? No idea. Because normally he doesn't care about things unless they're, you know, alive. Basically. Unless they're alive. He's usually not that interested. But I did have some guy sitting on my other desk one time, and he had great fun with that. I think I got a picture of it. It was the dice guys, the high rollers. I think it was a couple of the high rollers. I had some of the ones that you can get from the pizza dice, so they're different colors of clear plastic, and I had those, some of them up on my paint shelves that you can't see from here. But then I got more paint and I didn't have room. I'm like, well, all right, I guess I have to take, you know, some of these little, I had some Baby Yodas up there too. Some of these things off, so it ended up on my desk where it was fine for like weeks, and then one day Corbin shows up and he's like, nope, I'm gonna throw this guy around. So I took pictures of it to share with Bobby. I'm like, well, here's what my cat thinks of your sculpting. Just to, we like to tease the sculptors now and then. Zachariah, it took me buying 9 or so dice sets to get a complete set of them, so not too bad of odds. I lucked out. I have the clear ones from the Kickstarter, but I don't think I have a complete set of colored ones. I got more than 120, which, you know, I'm not going to complain about that. I think the one that Corbin was molesting, which was a 12, which also made that funnier somehow, because, you know, the poor unloved 12 gets has another bad day for a different reason. All right. So I do think the cool side is looking cooler. I've got like green in there, and then, you know, more golden yellow pinky things on the other side. So that is helping. Got paint that's drying up pretty bad. I need to, of course, check my references, and this part of the hand, I'm pretty sure is, well, speaking of my references, I will show them again for the people who weren't here at the beginning. So this is what it looked like after I finished doing, I used primer
so Reaper has gray and black primer, and then I mixed a darker gray in between them. I didn't end up putting any white in there because overall it's a pretty dark thing. And then let me find, I took some like lighting photos, and I had a main light on one side, and I took the photos just with that, so that's my primary light source. And then just to see where it would go on other areas, if there was some ambient light or some reflected light, and you can see the difference here. So I won't paint this as light as that, but it gives me an idea of where to put like highlights and shadows, although I do like this effect a lot with the kind of rim light. So we'll see if I cheat and do that or not. And then this was just taking samples from the photos of the lightest area on the bone in the light area, and then the lightest area in the reflected light area, and then the same thing with the black. And then I change things to grayscale because sometimes I can visualize better. And that was a similar thing. So looking at these, you know, a lot of that hand should actually be the lighter, warmer color. I just hadn't got there yet, which I'm not like super shocked about, but maybe I can kind of plunk a little of it in. So that we can sort of get an idea of how that's working. Do I remember the photo I just looked at? Absolutely not. So I'm not going to go too nuts on this. But I can give it a little more light so we're getting a better idea. And then that shadow line is also going to help create interest. And now I don't know if I did go a little too light down there. I might have to add some more shadow. Adding shadows is not a big heartache though, so I don't worry too much about that. So it becomes kind of a, you're trying to balance both an overall lighting concept and then also, well, this is how shapes work and this is where something should appear lighter and darker. And normally I do let paint dry in between doing these things, but we'll just call it wet blending. Luckily, I kind of want this to have streaky splotchiness, so I'm not too, you know, if I end up lifting a bit of paint, it's not the end of the world. All right, that starts giving us an idea. I do think I need to take that down. I went too far. Too uniform with the highlights. So let me see if I can avoid doing that here. So hopefully that's kind of an idea of what I'm going for with the lighter and the darker. Oh, no problem, Quindy. I don't think we had any desperate please help us find moments or anything like that. I was just trying to block in the lighter color on that hand real quick just to give an idea of sort of the light and shadow thing, because it's close to, I guess it is time to wrap up because Quindy wants to be able to get pulled away again. But she's going to find us a raid so that we can keep enjoying some hobby fun. Thank you everybody for joining me today. It's very likely that I'll still be working on this next week. If I can, I'll work on it on stream. It'll kind of depend on what thing I'm doing. When I'm sort of more on the finishing stages, I might need my whole brain to work on it, so that I don't do a bunch of stuff that I have to fix. But I don't think I don't know. I guess I'll see where I am. But if I am done, I'll find something else to work on. We'll talk more about the, prepping for the MSP Open or ReaperCon stuff, or just fun things in general. I'll show you how terrible my pottery thing turned out if I picked it up. We're going to be raiding Quantum Minis. Please say hi, spread the Reaper love, and hopefully I'll see you here next week. Thanks for coming, everybody.